Let's get more now on the EU referendum. This morning, David Cameron, at a hastily arranged news conference, accused the Leave campaign of telling complete untruths. Vote Leave has suggested Mr Cameron is rattled. Well, the UKIP MP Douglas Carswell, who's campaigning for a Leave vote, joins me now from our Westminster studio. Good afternoon to you.
Hi.
How rattled do you think he is?
There's definitely an air of panic over Downing Street. They were expecting, I think, to be comfortably ahead. And actually, although we're still the underdog, I think it's pretty clear that many of the Remain arguments are beginning to fall apart. The risks of Remain are now pretty obvious. And rather than talk about that, Downing Street is lashing out at the motives of some of the leading Leavers.
The issue of listening to experts, which the Prime Minister was pushing very hard in his news conference this morning, he has a point, doesn't he? If you, like, all these experts, or the majority of these experts, saying there is a huge risk to leaving, you wouldn't not get an expert in if your roof was in trouble.
Look at some of the experts' record, though. Were these the same experts who failed to regulate the banks, the experts who ran interest rates so low that they tanked the banks, the same experts who failed to see the financial crunch coming? I think we need to listen to the voice of businesses and entrepreneurs in this country who actually create wealth, not those who go to international shindigs and summits and pontificate and pretend that they can look into the future. We know that the record of many of these supranational organizations has been a little bit wanting. They failed to see the bank crisis coming. They failed to see the financial crisis coming. Look, David Cameron is getting a little desperate now. If we vote to remain, no expert can argue we will be liable for contributing to future EU bailouts. We will be liable to lose the rebate. We may even be liable for new EU treaties. These are indisputable facts. You don't need an expert to tell you they're coming.
Just looking at the wider issue of trust, this is something clearly the Remain campaign believes they have more of, if you like. What do you think your campaign is lacking at the moment?
I think our campaign certainly hasn't had the huge advantages. David Cameron tried to stack the deck in his favour, using the whole machinery of government to try to get the outcome he wanted. Because of the PERDA rules, he's finding it harder to do that. That means for the first time we've seen a far more level playing field. And in just 2 weeks of level fair play, we've seen the gap close. Although we're still the underdogs, we've still got the established vested interests and the big corporate banking funded Remain campaign against us. We're starting to close the gap. Even without the big corporate machinery on our side, even without that, we're beginning to win the arguments. And, you know, just because you're funded by Goldman Sachs or Citibank and you're part of a campaign group full of grandees, it doesn't mean you're right. And I think the public's waking up to that. Just
listening to some of the debates, and they seem to be getting more and more heated on a daily basis, on various TV networks. One of the key issues seems to be, for your campaign, what happens if we leave to those trading agreements? And you can't actually give a definitive answer, can you?
We can give a definitive answer. If we were to leave the EU right away, hypothetically say at midnight today, under international law, any existing arrangements that we have remain in place until they're replaced by something else. It's rather disingenuous of the other side to say that there would be this uncertainty. Everyone knows that under international law, pre-existing agreements remain in place until something else replaces them. So if we were to leave the EU, we would continue to have tariff-free, unrestricted access that we have at the moment, and the arrangements that the EU has put in place between the EU and third-party countries, we would, if you like, inherit those arrangements. What we could do is go further. Being in the EU means we cannot have a free trade agreement with Australia or India or China or much of the rest of the world. We could build on the existing arrangements that we have. The EU has been spectacularly slow at negotiating free trade agreements. Once we've left, we would keep what we've got, but build on it and go much further. That's good for jobs, good for the economy. I'm just slightly disappointed that the current inhabitant of Downing Street can't see that.
Douglas Carswell, thank you very much for your time.